Hearken warriors, welcome to the Brothers Gadenne Podcast, where we prepare you for the fury of emergencies, disasters, and the battles of everyday life. For Elder Verism, let us begin. Hey gang, Gads here. A little bit of an intro to today's podcast. We had some technical difficulties, which means some of it got cut out, especially at the end. We lost a good probably 20 minutes of us talking towards the end. So we will re-record it, but now I'm just going to put this one out, which is part 1 of tactical or emergency medicine. So sit back, relax, and enjoy part 1 of the art of emergency medicine. Fade to black. We kind of kept it hidden, but you have just come back from a journey.
I've just come back from a mad European tour. It has been awesome, absolutely epic to get around, see the other half of the world, how they live, and some of the related history that's in that region was really, really good to see.
Exploring our ancestral roots, as it were.
Yeah.
In some of those countries.
Definitely in some of them. So all around sort of the northern parts of Europe and a little bit higher even. It was very interesting.
The French, as our last name is somewhat French.
Yeah, the French, that was interesting. The German.
The Germans.
All the way up to Norway.
Yep, Scandinavians.
Back down through Scotland and then London and out again.
I think we got maybe some Irish blood in there as well, so that was maybe the only one
It's probably the only one I've missed.
Yeah.
But we are kind of a bit of a mongrel breed, to be honest.
Yeah, we hit all the rest. Scandinavian, German, French, English, Scottish. We've got all that.
It's all in there, swimming around.
Anyway, back in Australia. We were going to do a podcast via correspondence, but we didn't.
So we just waited till we got home and we're doing it now.
So here we are. Yeah. Right. How you doing?
Good. I mean, it's back to be back in the land of the cold. It's freezing down here.
It is. Has been quite chilly where we live. Frosty
Indeed. It was good when I got off the plane for the first 30 seconds after living in 30-degree heat in the northern hemisphere.
That's a heat wave for them too, isn't it?
It was massive, yeah. They were dying. People were melting in the street. And then got off the plane, go, this is nice and crispy. Yeah, good to be out of the heat. And then, I've had enough of this.
Yeah. All right, so what are we talking about today then? Let's jump into today's topic.
So today we're going to talk about a bit of a medical side of things, the TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care.
So being medic, I will obviously take the lead.
Absolutely.
Go on this one. All right, no, you are a doctor, so I think this will be more of an interview one. I would just be asking you questions.
Look, maybe. Look, I wouldn't doubt yourself at all. You have a lot of experience in covering this topic in both your military experience and post-military experience. And we're going to talk about, what this means and what it means to civilians about this. Because if you're not in the military, you're going to think, why would I need to know any tactical combat casualty care?
Yeah.
But we'll explain that today.
Yeah, so the art of tactical medicine is what I've decided to name this podcast.
Yeah.
Just then. Let's jump into it. So tactical medicine, let's get a little bit of an explanation of it. You said what the TCCC protocol is there. I think first off, maybe let's talk about why would we talk about this?
Yeah. So it's it's relevant in a lot of situations, especially in that tactical environment, but in our day-to-day environment, we can come across sort of disasters. There are known threats of bad guys, criminals, terrorists that may put us in a situation where we could suffer from some of these devastating wounds, such as bullet wounds and blast wounds. But it can also be utilised in things in the urban environment, in a building collapse, a car rollover, putting your arm through a plate glass window. All of these things could be relevant every day.
Yeah, so we're obviously the goal of one of the things we're trying to do here with this podcast and also with Ragnarok Survival is bring the information that we have, which we usually teach to people who aren't necessarily just civilians. We're trying to give an access to you there. so that you can get access to this information, that we've got decades of experience from military backgrounds, from private security, blah, blah, blah. And then you hear this word, TCCC, tactical medicine, tactical combat casualty care. I'm not operating in a tactical environment. I'm not in combat. Why do I care about this? But it does definitely have application, and we've seen how this actually applies to the real world. There are bad things that can happen in our world. So very overtly things are, why would I be practicing tactical combat casualty care when I live in a civilian setting? Because sometimes we see injuries that are analogous, that are the same as war-like injuries occurring in a civilian setting. So point A, terrorist attacks, or active shooter events, or insert knife attack, machete attack, whatever it is. So insert this here, where we've got injuries that are similar in severity and type to what we might see in a war zone. So yeah, it's definitely something that is starting to creep into the civilian sphere, especially the civilian sphere of medicine.
Yeah. I mean, that goes along with things that come from the military, particularly in the areas of medicine, take a while to trickle through, but a lot of them do start from the military first. We find out how we use different techniques and different procedures, different bits of equipment. They get tested on the battlefield, and then you find about 10 years later, they kind of trickle through to the civilian world.
Yeah, so, maybe that's an apt point to jump into kind of the history of this. It's what we're talking about here is a different set of protocols, essentially, for treating casualties. Maybe a different mindset, different application of some of the things that you would do. So if you've done a civilian type first aid course, and that's usually how I refer to it. In Australia, we usually call it a St. John's first aid course because that's one of the main providers. I mean, there are many, many providers, but being Australians, we like to call things by their brand name, i.e. Band-Aids or, whatever. Hills Hoist.
Yeah, it's just it's a very Australian thing to do, I think, call it by their brand names. But
yeah. People overseas right now are like, Hills Hoist?
What the hell is a hoist?
You can look it up. So, yeah, how does this actually differ? Where does it come from? What's the history of TCCC? How did it come to be a thing?
So TCCC was, as we sort of alluded to, was originally designed and made by the military, by the American military in particular, after they started getting to more battles in modern times, and having a look at the statistics of what were the biggest killers on the battlefield, and finding out that two things were wrong with their current protocols of the usual Doctors ABC protocol and some of their teachings that they had going. So the TCCC developed to cover some of these areas of catastrophic bleeds, compromised airways, compromised respiratory positions, and some of the other things that we don't normally think about on that continuum of the Doctors ABC, head injuries and hypothermia.
Yeah, so when I joined the military in 2003, you get taught first aid, and they were still teaching Doctors ABC, or Doctors ABCD, or Doctors ABCDE, or whenever you learnt it, you're going to learn a different version of it. So they're still teaching that basically to us with a few add-ons in there. What we found, well, what the Americans at least found, after looking at why their soldiers were dying on the battlefield from statistical data that they had from Afghanistan, from Iraq. So you're looking at these two wars now that were giving them a lot of information about what was going on there. So they decided, right, we need a new protocol here. We need to look at something else. So what is killing our soldiers? Bleeding out, airway compromised, sucking chest wounds or tension pneumothorax, or, whatever, some sort of hole in the chest that's causing problems. That's a big one. Other complications, hypothermia being part of we won't go into the weeds on it too much, but the triad of, what do you call it? The triad of death?
Triad of death, yeah.
I'll call it that, triad of death. Things that actually compromise and work against each other and exacerbate a casualty getting worse. So hypothermia is one of them, because it can look a bit weird. Why would you care about someone being cold in the battlefield?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I guess so that's kind of the history that we're talking about. And then obviously, this is a long period. We're talking about 20 years that we were fighting in a war over in Afghanistan. Those people came home, and some of those people were doctors or medics, and they went out into the civilian world and then saw the obvious difference between civilian first aid and tactical medicine and said, maybe there is actually some application for tactical medicine to come into civilian first aid.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that now. We're now adding things like a capital C on the front of the doctor's ABC for that catastrophic bleeding. We'll get in the reason that a little bit later, but we're seeing it all filter through. I mean, things like just the use of tourniquets. When I come back from working overseas in the military, started in the paramedics, tourniquets were limited and only starting to be used. Now they are everywhere in the civilian world, and for good reason too.
Yeah, I remember actually the first civilian first aid course I did after the army. They were talking about bleedings. It was a lovely older lady who was teaching the course, and I said, if this is an arterial bleed that we're looking at, would we not just put a tourniquet on it? And there was a gasp, audible gasp. Like, he said the T word, like, thou shalt not say the T word. It was this, like dark art that no one wanted, like Voldemort or something similar to that. Like, you shall not say its name. As if you slap a tourniquet on someone, they're going to die. And I'm like, my experience is a little different then, because I've seen these things work, and they actually do the opposite. You slap one on if someone's bleeding out, and they kind of live, or bleeding out from a limb, obviously. And yeah, soldiers, we love them. We can't get enough of them. I've got that bag there has 2 of them. I'm pretty sure that bag has 1. Yeah. And in my ute right now, you could probably find at least 4.
That's it. I carry them, everywhere there. In my car, in my bag, they're just dotted all over the place. In my kitchen, there's one sitting above the stove. It's ready to go.
Well, you burn your hand, you're like, tourniquet on.
Yep. Fix everything.
I've cut myself cutting onions. Tourniquet.
Every time.
Yep. Love tourniquets. Yeah, so that's coming into, now we're seeing in civilian first aid, doctors, for those who don't know civilian first aid, what the acronym is. You work off acronyms because it's a emergency situation. You're usually going from sympathetic nervous system response into a parasympathetic nervous system response, so you are not going to be able to recall a lot. So we use acronyms, and doctors ABCD has been the classical one that we've used. Danger response, send for help, airway, breathing, circulation, was disability. I think it's now defib.
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends
D for depends, right? Yeah. Depends diapers. Put them on. Because they might have shit their pants. So get the diaper on.
Maybe.
Yeah. No. So now we're seeing doctors C ABC.
Or C doctors.
C doctors.
Yes. C comes at the very start.
Wow. So forget danger?
Forget danger. Straight to C.
Oh. All right. I didn't know that one. That's I'm learning stuff here. Yeah. See, we're all learning. Every day is a school day. C doctors.
Yeah. And look, I love this change. And one of the biggest things I think, though, rather than just look the acronyms and the procedures and that we're talking about with this TCCC, is the mindset change. The traditional first aid teaches you to treat someone else. And it also teaches you subconsciously that if you're the someone else injured, you're helpless. You wait for someone to treat you. The TCCC teaches you self-aid first. So it teaches you now, I have to fix myself in this situation, and I have a means and an acronym to do it.
Yeah. So we'll get to the acronym, and then, but before that, well, I'll just touch on that, the self-aid sort of thing, self-aid, buddy aid, first aid. So again, first aid, when we think about it from a civilian setting, is the first person that's going to help me, if the thing has happened to me, is somebody else who's coming in to respond. We're not usually focusing on that self-aid sort of thing. Another really interesting thing that the Americans found is, and my old training definitely did this, the old saying is, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. So in training, you'd be walking along simulation, you've been hit, and you'd fall to the ground screaming, medic, medic, medic. And they found that soldiers were doing that on the battlefield, get shot, fall to the ground, going, medic, 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 and then they die sitting there screaming medic, because the medic's like, yo, bro, I'm in a gunfight here, sort yourself out. I got some other things to worry about until I can get to you. So they changed the focus and said, right, you need to fix yourself first. That's what you need to do. Big shift from first aid. First, it's in the name. That should be the first thing that happens. It's actually really the third thing that happens in this protocol. So, that self-aid is a big focus of it. Save yourself first. Sort yourself out first. Get that tourniquet on yourself. Try and do whatever you can. Crawl to safety, blah, blah, blah. So what is the acronym for TCCC?
The acronym that I use for it is MARCH, or March-E.
Or Marche.
Marche? Yeah, you could say Marche if you're that
French.
inclined. But I'll say Marchie.
Marchie.
Marchie. Much more Australian if I say the Marchie.
Going for a Marchie, mate.
M. So we'll start off with what the M stands for. M stands for massive bleeding. So this protocol is set up, it's a priority order of how you're going to treat injuries that you come across out in the field. Or in the home place, as we discussed before. Massive bleeding. Nothing will kill you quicker than a massive bleed. And we're talking about those big pumping arterial bleeds. They say the average human, and they've based this off a 175 centimetre tall male of a 75 kilos. So you can add a little bit, take a little bit from this depending on your size.
So short, skinny and weak, is what we're saying.
No, average, perfect in every way. By the way, that's my dimensions.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea.
Yeah. And they say they've got 5 litres of blood in them. So, if you're a bit bigger, you've got a little bit more. If you're a little bit less, you've got a little bit less. But that can get pumped out of you very quickly. Your heart pumps at an extended rate, especially with a bit of adrenaline pumping after you've been injured. And if you've got a major arterial bleed, that blood will pump at you within a minute type of thing. So you have very little time to do something about it. So the first thing you've got to consider, because if your blood leaks out, if all the fluid leaks out, you're not going to get to the rest of it. None of the rest of it's important. We've got to stop that bleed, that massive bleed. The second part that we look at is the airway. This goes along with our doctor's ARBC. It's one of the easiest things to sort of fix. Make sure, airway's nice and clear. Respiratory, so fixing the lungs, making sure that they're operational. We'll talk a little bit about how we do that in a minute, or what things we can do in these kind of situations under this protocol. Circulation, you're going back and checking for those minor sort of bleeds that might kill you a little bit slower. Having a look at hypothermia or head injuries. Hypothermia is a really interesting one. We'll talk about that shortly. And head injuries are super important. Or as I like to think it more, because there's not a lot you can do about a good head injury, but there are things you can do about a broken cervical or neck injury.
That's a big one too. I feel that is really focused on in civilian first aid. Like C-spine integrity is a huge thing. And it's kind of down in the protocol a little bit.
Yeah.
In this one.
Yeah. And look, I think it just should be. It's still vitally important, but it's something that you've got to consider in all your movements along the way.
C1 to 5 keeps you alive, as they say. Right. So, wait, did we get to E?
No. We're not. And E. Final one, evacuation. So in the military, that looks, evacuation is just getting that person out of there, getting help and getting that stage.
Yep. Yeah, that seems like a little throwaway thing, the evacuation, but I think it puts a slightly different emphasis on it, or emphasis on this, that like what you're trying to do is evacuate this person. You're not trying to keep them alive for, the next 30 years. You need to keep them alive in order to get them to somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And so there's certain assumptions that you can put into this as well. Once you think, oh wait, I'm trying to get them ready to evacuate. First off, all my treatments need to be tight. They need to be good enough to move I'm not just laying things on and hope that it sticks. I need to actually secure these, whatever interventions I've done, in a way that I can pick up and carry this person. The second one is, the idea that help is on the way and that all you have to do is stay there. That's not necessarily true either. In civilian first aid, we've got ambulances and things like that. Somebody is coming to you. We might actually have to go to them, or at least move this person to another place, or move them out of danger.
Yeah, definitely. So that's something to consider. So it's still vitally relevant in that situation.
Yeah. So that's marche. That's what we're talking about here. So a few things, little comments I'll chuck in there. First off is, sometimes I get the question if I'm doing a lesson on this. Well, D was the first thing in civilian first aid, check for danger.
Mm.
Why are we not checking for danger in TCCC?
Why are we not checking for danger?
Yeah, it's a valid question.
Mm.
What I like to answer that with is that's kind of built into the self-aid, buddy aid, first aid idea, that you should not be treating a casualty if there is still danger. You shouldn't be even at M if there is danger extant in that situation. You need to be sorting out the danger. And it's built for soldiers. Obviously, the protocol is called March. It's easy to spell.
And they do a lot of it anyway. So.
And soldiers march. They're familiar with that. So you got to make it easy. Lowest common denominator. All right. So the idea is it's for soldiers. You're in warlike conditions. Something has gone wrong. That every soldier knows there's danger, and I need to sort out danger first before I do anything else. So I think when teaching it to civilians, they can sometimes get a bit stuck on that. Go like, wait, so I don't care about danger now? No, you do. You definitely still care about the danger. What caused this?
Absolutely, yeah. You got to figure out, if there's still danger to you or to the person you're treating. That has to be assessed and dealt with first. We say in the TCCC, when we teach it in the civilian world, we often take out the T, the tactical part. The tactical part is returning of fire, making sure that the place is, or getting the person to a semi-secure area so that you're not getting shot at yourself before you start the combat casualty care. That first bit is sort of fits under that danger. So are we safe enough to start the treatment?
Yep. Yeah. I glanced over the buddy aid sort of thing too. The idea is that somebody should start looking after themselves. The buddy aid, before we get to the first aid, might be calling out to someone, if you're in cover or, hiding from a threat or doing whatever, calling out to them, seeing if they can move to you, maybe coaching them through what to do if they're freaking out, like, get your tourniquet out, grab your tourniquet. If they don't have a tourniquet, maybe throwing equipment to them, but not actually going out there and rendering help at this stage.
Yeah, where you're not physically helping them with hands-on, but you're helping them, in some sort of way.
Another way to think about this or to explain it is zones that they talk about.
Mm.
Can you talk about zones?
Zones. Are you talking about like is that a hot zone, warm zone?
I am.
Green zone?
Yep. Hot, warm, cold.
Cold, yeah. Look, zones are used in the civilian world, especially in bigger disasters and things like that. But we could use them they transfer across to the military as well. So hot zone is the immediate zone, the immediate danger zone, where things are
danger zone
under threat. And you don't want to be adding more people because that adds more problems into the hot zone. The warm zone, for want of a better term, is you've got some sort of cover and you can do a little bit more. You've usually got cover from that immediate threat. And then the cold zone is where you are safe and secure and you can begin the rest of your treatment operations.
Yep. Yeah. So nothing lines up in the real world nicely to these sorts of things, but from a theoretical standpoint, you can look at it kind of like a hot zone is self-aid. Like people are dealing with a threat, that's why it's still hot. No one's coming to save you, save yourself. A warm zone now, we might be looking at buddy aid. Somebody helping you out. If there's someone next to you, they might be able to start to do some things, but probably not, advanced or more deeper interventions. And then cold zone is when we're looking at, actually rendering that first aid, actually going through the protocol to its extent. Cool. All right. Let's talk about just briefly. We're not going to obviously teach about in depth the actual protocol, but we'll just touch on each letter, and think about one or two things that you can do within there. Maybe things that we utilize. So we've kind of given the game away with massive bleeding, tourniquet, but there's some other things you can also do for massive bleeding.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely other things. And look, even before your tourniquet, the first thing you want to do when something's leaking a lot, pressure. Just grab it, hold it, put pressure on it. The tourniquet does the same thing in sort of a indirect sort of method, but it's adding pressure to try and stop that blood coming out.
Yep.
The reason we want to stop that blood coming out, or we want to at least slow it down, to give the body time for those coagulation mechanisms to take place. When you get cut, when you start to bleed, there's two mechanisms in place that start this chemical cascade for coagulation, because you don't want coagulating blood in your bloodstream all the time, so it's got to remain fluid, but you need it to clot when something's going on. One, when you get an injury inside your arteries and your veins, they send off an inflammation signal, starts off the cascade. Two, when that blood comes in contact with air, it starts off again that cascade to coagulate. But if you've got too much free-flowing blood, too much fast-flowing blood, too much pressure, it will just keep blowing off those clots as they're trying to form, and you won't give it enough time.
It's the way I always think about it is like it's a hose that's been turned on and it's pouring out, and you're kind of going further back up the hose and crimping it or grabbing the hose in order to slow it down, because no clot can form at the end of that hole, constantly being blown out.
Absolutely, and that's the theory of the tourniquets. The other ways we have to sort of assist with this bleeding, besides like direct pressure, say grabbing hold of the end of the hose, is packaging. If there's a big hole that you can't get to that's a bit deeper, you can't put direct pressure from the surface on it, you can get some bandage material or something like that, stuff it in the hole, and that adds pressure, and it slows down the bleeding enough for the body and the blood to do its thing.
So creating pressure, you're actually pushing material into a wound.
Into the wound.
Yeah, which a lot of people find pretty hard as a concept to stomach.
Yeah, especially as there's blood coming out and it's squishy and it makes noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, I guess it also creates a barrier there that when that blood coagulation wants to happen, you want to clot, it's got something to actually hit and clot against.
To clot onto.
Yeah. This, used the hose analogy before. This one I kind of think of the boy in the dike sticking a finger in the leaky hole.
A little bit, yeah.
Kind of.
I'm
explaining these analogies. Also, take that with a grain of salt, because my ultimate toolkit, problem-solving flowchart for first aid is keep the red stuff in the body, keep air going in and out.
It's a good start. It's a really good start.
I mean, I'm no doctor, so I can't pronounce people dead, but I think if you're not breathing and there's the blood's leaked out, the red stuff's come out, that's a pretty good indicator that you're dead.
It's close, very close.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things you can do for bleeding. Direct pressure, indirect pressure, packing the wound, elevation. Maybe also
that limb, if it's a limb above the heart, can slow it a little bit as well.
Yep. Cool. All right, airway.
So airway, look, it's not that much different to what we get taught in your basic first aid, your doctor's DROBC, is you just got to clear the airway. So you can, if they've got stuff in there, tip them on their side so it falls out. I'm not that keen on sticking my fingers into people's mouths because they bite when they go from conscious to unconscious, or if they're a bit out of it. But, if they've had an injury to their airway, to their mouth, to their nose, you can clear it. There are things out there you can use adjuncts to put in. You put them in their nose, nasal pharyngeal, put in their mouth, and oral pharyngeal. As long as you know how to use it, that's fine.
So these are tubes, for lack of better explanation, that you stick into someone's nose or into their mouth to create an artificial airway if that airway is compromised.
Absolutely, yeah. It sort of, helps to keep it clear, for want of a better term.
So, fun little story here. When we were doing our combat medics course in the military, they showed us Gadelle's airways, which are a type of like hard plastic airway that you can put in through the mouth to create an artificial airway. And it's quite difficult because they've got a bend in them, so you've got to kind of go upside down and slide it in and around. And the medic who was teaching it said, you do it like this. Obviously, we can't practice on each other because military, we like to practice everything on each other. So, like, we were practicing bagging on each other, so we like pin cushions, cannulating. And for some reason, one of the mates goes, why can't you do it? He's like, because you've got a gag reflex and it hits a gag reflex, so you can only really do it on an unconscious person. He goes, oh, that's interesting. I don't actually have a gag reflex. For starters, I don't want to know how you found that out, man. But that then was like, oh, okay, well, let's practice on you. We didn't do it too much. I think you got one or two thrown in his gullet. But.
And there you have it. That's part 1 of the art of emergency medicine. We will record part 2 ASAP and get it out to you. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. But until next time, stay safe and stay happy. I don't know. Don't bleed out until we can get the information to you. See you on the next one. That is the end of this tale. Until next we meet, keep the fires burning. Fra Eldi Verissum.